They were one snap away from the NFC Championship game. They went toe-to-toe with a Rams team that nearly knocked off the eventual champs. And somehow, they're being treated like a feel-good story instead of a real threat. If you're tired of the national media sleeping on Chicago, hit like, share this with another Bears fan, and subscribe right now. Because we need to talk about this disrespect. ESPN dropped its way too early 2026 power rankings, and the Chicago Bears landed at number 11. Not top 5. Not top 8. 11. Just outside that so-called elite tier. And I have to ask, what more did this team need to prove last season? Let's break down the list. The Seahawks sit at number 1 as defending champs. Fair. The Patriots at 2 after their Super Bowl appearance. Denver, Buffalo, San Francisco. Detroit at 7. Philadelphia at 8. Jacksonville at 9. Green Bay at 10. Then Chicago. Now let's be honest. The Bears already beat Green Bay 2 out of 3 times. That was settled on the field. Not hypothetical. Not projected. Actual results. So why are they still being placed behind them? And Philadelphia? There's uncertainty there. Coaching adjustments. Scheme evolution. Philosophical changes offensively. Meanwhile, Chicago has stability with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, arguably one of the most exciting coach-quarterback pairings in the league right now. Is continuity suddenly a weakness? Courtney Cronin described this as one of the quieter off-seasons Chicago has had in recent memory. No chaos. No desperation. No franchise-altering moves required. And that's exactly the point. They aren't scrambling anymore. They're building. The culture is established. The belief is real. The locker room knows it can win in crunch time. Now it's about refinement, not reinvention. Last offseason was about fixing the offense. The offensive line additions paid off immediately. The run game became consistent. Caleb Williams grew dramatically from year 1 to year 2. Luther Burden flashed. Colston Loveland began to emerge as a matchup nightmare. The offensive identity solidified. Now the focus shifts. The defense took the ball away at an elite rate. That wasn't luck, that was instinct and aggression. But down-to-down consistency. That's where the leap must happen. The pass rush ranked near the bottom of the league in win rate. That has to change. Whether it's targeting someone like Trey Hendrickson, exploring a Max Crosby trade, or hitting big in the draft, Chicago must generate more pressure. Because think about this, if you upgrade the pass rush from bottom tier to top 12 while maintaining strong takeaway numbers, what does that defense look like? That's how contenders are built. Here's the question of the day. If acquiring an elite pass rusher costs a first-round pick, should the Bears pull the trigger? Comment below, yes or no. I want to hear your take. Now let's talk betting odds, because this is where it gets even more interesting. Chicago sits at plus 2,700 to win the Super Bowl. That's the 15th best odds in the league. Green Bay. Plus 1,300. The gap between those two numbers is massive. Even if you believe the Packers are slightly ahead, is the difference really double? Vegas is essentially saying the Bears are middle of the pack heading into 2026. A regression candidate. A team that overachieved. But let's examine that narrative. Yes, Chicago won multiple close games. Yes, there were dramatic finishes. But this wasn't a 12-1 in one-score games situation like Minnesota in 2022. The Bears weren't constantly being outplayed and surviving miracles. In several games, they controlled the flow early and allowed things to tighten late. That's not pure luck. That's a young team learning situational football. And don't forget, they were a couple short yardage conversions away from beating the Rams and advancing. That's not fantasy. That's a few inches on 3rd and 4th down. So again, where is the regression coming from? Offensively, year 2 under Ben Johnson should mean fewer growing pains. Remember training camp reports. Pre-snap penalties. Communication hiccups. Verbiage issues. By mid-season, those problems were shrinking. Now imagine Caleb Williams operating with full comfort from day one. He's already elite off-script. In big moments, he elevates. If he simply becomes more consistent from snap to snap, he enters the top-tier quarterback conversation. And we all know this league runs through quarterbacks. When the quarterback ascends, the franchise ascends. The offensive core is largely intact. The line projects as a top 10 unit if healthy, possibly top 5. Tight end depth is strong, with Loveland taking off. The receiver room has room to clean up drops, but the talent is undeniable. Rome Odunze entering year 3. Luther Burden entering year 2. Natural development alone could boost production. Defensively, health plays a role. Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon battled injuries late. Improvement there matters. Add 2 to 4 impact players this offseason across the trade market, free agency, and the draft, and suddenly the defensive ceiling rises significantly. Will the Bears win as many late-game thrillers again? Maybe not. But they may not need to. A better pass rush means fewer last-second situations. So here's another question. If Caleb Williams takes the leap everyone expects, who in the NFC clearly stands above Chicago? Seattle is strong. Detroit is explosive. San Francisco remains dangerous. But Chicago proved it belongs in that tier. The gap isn't wide. And this is the key difference from previous eras. In 2018, it felt like Chicago had arrived, but the offense wasn't built for sustainability. That foundation cracked quickly. This time, the structure feels durable. The system fits the quarterback. The quarterback fits the system. That alignment is rare. Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams are entering year 2 together. That continuity is gold in today's NFL. Defensive coordinators now have a year of tape on Caleb, but he also has a year of experience recognizing coverages, disguises, and pressure looks. The mental side slows down in year 3 for quarterbacks. The game becomes clearer. Faster processing leads to earlier throws. Earlier throws lead to explosive plays without chaos. That's evolution. Now ask yourself, if Chicago improves defensively even marginally and Caleb takes another step, why can't this be a 12 or 13 win team? Why can't they be hosting playoff games instead of fighting for wild card positioning? The national conversation still frames this team as on the edge, fringe contender, bubble team. But that's exactly where legitimate threats often begin. Great franchises sustain success. They don't spike once and disappear. They compete 3 or 4 times over a 5-year window. That's the next challenge for Chicago: consistency. They already proved they can punch above expectations. Now they must prove it wasn't a 1-year surge. And honestly, look across the roster. Where is the obvious drop-off coming? The offensive line stayed relatively healthy last year. That's one variable. Injuries happen. But depth has improved. The skill positions are young and ascending. The quarterback is trending upward. The coaching staff is aligned. There isn't a glaring weakness outside the pass rush, and that's fixable. So when I see number 11 in power rankings and plus 2,700 odds, I don't see reality. I see hesitation. I see a league waiting for proof. But Bears fans already saw it. They saw clutch drives. They saw resilience. They saw a team that wasn't overwhelmed by playoff pressure. They saw a quarterback who didn't shrink when the lights were brightest. That's not a fluke. That's a foundation. And if this front office does for the defense what it did for the offense last year, if they add speed, add pressure, and reinforce depth, we won't be debating whether Chicago belongs. We'll be debating whether they're the team nobody wants to face in January. So I'll leave you with this. Are the Bears just a good story from last season, or are they the beginning of something much bigger? I think we're about to find out. Bear down.